So today at Bargello-A-GoGo I'm going to be showing you how to turn this canvas into a cushion with a concealed zip in the backing. So this is obviously the canvas that it's going to be the main focus of the cushion. And also what you'll need is a sewing machine and some backing fabric for your cushion. So I've decided to go with this green velvet, gorgeous fabric here that I think will go really well with the green elements of the cushion. You're also going to need some matching thread for your sewing machine. So here I have some green thread, and it's just 100% polyester thread that's ideal for using on your sewing machine. And also I've got the bobbin for the sewing machine in the same colour I've prepared earlier. You're also going to need a universal sewing foot that normally comes as standard with your sewing machine. So on this one here, this is number 1 on my particular brand of sewing machine, which is a Bernina, and that's just for the standard sewing around the actual cushion. And you're also going to need a concealed zipper foot for your machine. So on this particular one for my Bernina machine, it's number 35, and it has these little grooves here that you're going to use for a concealed zip to put into the cushion. And lastly, you're also going to need your actual zip, which I've got here. And as you can see, it's got the teeth on the underside and they don't show on the front here. This is your concealed zip, and you'll need a length that's going to be right for your cushion size. And as well as that, you're also going to need a tape measure, and you're also going to need some pins and some spare tacking thread and a hand sewing needle, which I will be showing you as well for the zip placement. So I've noted in the description below the materials you'll need to actually make this cushion with this backing. And something else you might also want to use that I'm going to be showing you in the video is just some pattern paper that I pre-draw out before I cut out the pattern on here. I mean, you can use any kind of plain paper if you want, or if you've got actual pattern paper with dots and crosses on it, you can use that. Just something that you can put the paper on to cut round this fabric. So first of all, I'm going to measure the width each side of my canvas, including the edges here that don't have the Bargello embroidery on, using a tape measure. Now these tape measures are available in my shop. They're really good because they show inches and centimetres on one side, and they're from the brand called Hemline, and then they also show just inches on the other side. So they're really, really useful. So I'm just going to measure with both the centimetre and inch side on here, and I can see when I measure this, it is 44 centimetres, or just under 17.5 inches of fabric that I'm going to need to cut out, which I'm first going to do on pattern paper. And on top of that, so it's going to be the same roughly on the other side as well. And what I'm going to have to do for my particular one, because I'm going to be adding this concealed zip in the middle of the fabric, on the backing fabric. So I'm also going to have to add a seam allowance of 1.5 centimetres on the middle part, because I'm going to be cutting 2 different sections on there. So I will have to add, once I divide the 44 centimetres by 2, I will also have to add 1.5 centimetres on each side as well, which I will show you. So this may vary depending on what cushion you're making and what size it is, but just bear in mind those measurements there. So I have now drawn out my pattern piece. I've only had to do one pattern piece because what I'm going to do is double the fabric and cut it, so I can do 2 at the same time, which saves time as well. So I've kept the normal length across the top of 44 centimetres, And down the side I've added on 1.5 centimetres seam allowance. I haven't drawn the seam allowances here, but there is seam allowance as per the canvas edging on here. And so I've added on, if you divide 44 centimetres on my particular cushion I'm making here by 2, it's 22 centimetres, and then I've added on 1.5 centimetres for the seam allowance, making it 23.5 centimetres in the length. I've used this cross and dot pattern paper, but you can use anything, just use a ruler and you can draw out your template as well, and you can draw it out for whatever length sort of cushion you need, with the backing divided by 2 as well. I tend to use this pattern paper because I find it really good. I make a lot of my own clothes, so I find when I'm designing a pattern for a garment I want to make myself, this is really handy things for me to draw out my patterns on, just because it's got the lines all over it here, so I find that really helpful. You can use gridded paper, or like I said, even if you've just got some plain A4 paper around, or A3 paper, even baking paper you could use, just anything that you can, that's going to be stiff enough to sort of pin to some fabric. And this is, you know, not too thick, so anything like this is fine. So what I'm going to do next is pin the actual pattern piece onto my fabric. Now what I've done here is I've actually folded this in two, as you can see. And the reason I've done that is because I'm going to just pin one piece and then cut round the whole of the fabric. I normally cut on the wrong side of the fabric. So first of all I'm going to get my pattern piece here, and I can see it fits nicely on there. There's plenty of fabric just around the edges here, so I thankfully got the right size in fabric that I ordered. There is a selvage piece here, you don't want that in your cushion. If you're really struggling with how much fabric you've got, then you could maybe get away with it in the seam line where it's hidden and it's not in the actual cushion piece, if you were really desperate for fabric space, but luckily I won't need that. So what I'm next going to do is just pin this onto my fabric. Luckily there's no pattern on this, so I haven't got to worry about pattern matching, where that's going to go. It's just a plain piece of velvet fabric that's great for cushion backings. So I'm just going to pin that on as straight as I can. Again, I don't have to worry too much about a grain line on this. It's just going onto the back of the cushion. It's personally, I think it's fine when you're making a cushion. There might be some official rules around that, but I'm just showing you how I personally make these. So I'm next just going to pin that onto the fabric back in here. So I'm going to be using these flat-headed pins for pinning the paper onto the fabric, and I find they're good even when you're sewing as well. They're really good for cushions and pinning. And I do actually, they're again from they're professional flower head pins here, and they are from the brand Hemline again, and I do stock these in my shop too, so you might want to check them out. I'll put a link in the description below so you can have a look. And I just find them really good for when I'm pinning fabric together and also pattern pieces. So I'm just going to pin this round onto this fabric, and they're nice and long as well, so you get a nice long length out of them, and they go through very easily. So I'm just going to continue to do this around this edging here. So I've now pinned out my pattern onto the fabric piece, and I've made sure I've laid it as flat as I can when pinning, to make sure it's not crinkled and it's going to be the right width for when I attach it to the canvas front. So now I need some fabric scissors, which I've got here, and I'm just going to cut around all these edges, all 4 edges. So I'm just going to carefully cut around the edge here. And then I'm just going to repeat that for the other 3 edges here. So I've now cut round all the edges, all 4 edges, and now I'm just going to remove the pins and the pattern paper that I used to cut out the template with all these edges. So I've now removed the pins. I'm just going to remove the pattern paper, and there we have the 2 edges that I'm going to be adding the concealed zip in, and also adding it to the finished canvas piece of the Bargello embroidery. So now you can see what I mean with the centre here. You will join this and then you'll have a zip through the middle. I've actually had a zip here that's actually a bit shorter than the fabric, which I've done on purpose because I have a little seam here, and there's still enough room in this zip where I'll be able to get the cushion inner out of it as and when I need to. So what I'm going to do next, because they're quite raw, these edges, as you can see, I'm going to finish them off. Now personally I'm going to overlock the edges because I'm fortunate enough to own an overlocker machine because I make a lot of clothes. But you can use zigzag edging on your sewing machine. That would be really good to finish the edging. Or you could even use pinking shears, which kind of give like a little sort of zigzaggy effect of a cut in the fabric, and they're perfectly good to use as well. So as you can see here, I've overlocked the edges of this velvet fabric, and I could have done it in a matching green thread, but I thought for the purposes of this video I'd do it in white so you could see what I meant by an overlocked edge. And like I said, you could zigzag it or use pinking shears to finish your edging. So now I'm at the point where I'm going to be adding the zip. So what I've done on this piece here is, this is the front of the zip, and I've opened it up, so as you can see here, that's the front, and I've opened it up, and what we're doing is we're putting the underside or the front of it on the top of the right side of the fabric. And with this nice little overlocked edge, again it would be the same if you had it pinking sheared or zigzagged, I can just use that as a border to place my zip, so I can easily sort of line it up there. And then you can just measure each side just to make sure where you want your zip placement on your piece of fabric as well. And then all you're going to do on your other piece is you're going to do the same as what you've done here on one of the edges, and you're going to, again, you're going to match it up. Make sure you place the zip the same side that you've done on that one as well. So once you've pinned in this edge here, you're then just going to get the other piece of the velvet fabric. What I like to do is just pin it down the side here just to make sure it's sort of matching the same end, and then you're going to start on the other side of the zip in the same place. And again, the right side of your fabric's facing here and the wrong side is over the top of the zip, and again your teeth are here of the zip, of the concealed zip, and you're just going to line up the other edge along this border here where the overlocked stitches are. So you've kind of got the front of the zip facing downwards, and this is the underside, the back side of the zip there. And again, we're just going to pin that along till we get to the edge here. So I'll just show you. So I'm just going to pop my zip there. I'm just going to get a pin, and I'm just going to roughly pin it as I go up there. You can roughly pin this because afterwards we're going to hand tack it before sewing, because I think it just keeps everything in, hopefully in good place for the matching of your edges and the zip placement on both sides. So we're just going to continue to pin it here as we go up the fabric. So I've just zipped up the zip just to check the placement of the fabric, and I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to now do is just hand tack the zip in place. And what's great about these flathead pins is I was able to zip it up whilst I temporarily pinned it with these without the actual pin heads getting caught in the zip, whereas sometimes with a round headed pin they can get caught up when you're trying to zip and unzip it. So that was really good. So what we're going to be doing now is just hand tacking these and removing the pins, because when you go to sew you're not going to want these pins by your machine as you're sewing. So I've now hand tacked the zip to the fabric, and all I've done is I've just used a silk thread here, just a Gutermann one, which I find really smooth and easy to take in and out of the fabric, and just a normal hand sewing needle. And I've just done a simple long straight stitch, doesn't have to be particularly neat, and you just, because you're going to be removing the stitches afterwards, so you're just sewing it along the edge. I've tried to keep the tacking stitches as far away from the actual zip as possible, the actual teeth, so I don't catch them when I'm sewing, and it might prove more problematic to remove the thread. So I've done that on both sides here. So here's the wrong side of the fabric, and then the zip is just literally the underside of it, so the right side is on the front there, and the back of it shows on this part. So you've joined the zip here, just matching the border edge there. So when you go to zip it up, when I turn it the right way round, I mean obviously it's not going to sit properly yet because I've not actually sewn it in, but that's kind of, this will actually, once it's sewn in, will sit over and then it will be concealed. But just to give you an idea of it on here. And I'm happy with the placement, so now I'm ready to take it to the machine and use this concealed zipper foot here, which is, like I said before, was number 35 on the Bernina machine I use, and we're gonna stitch that in. So what I've done is I've fully opened up the zip, and I'm going to start at the top here, and the aim is, what you need to do is kind of unroll these teeth and put them in the slot of the zip, and then what will happen is your needle will go down and stitch under, kind of under this roll, as this little groove here sort of unfolds it. So what I first need to do is, near the top, I just kind of need to try and unravel it a bit, just unroll it a bit there, and try and just get it within that little groove, which is what I've managed to do here. And then just by hand, I'm just going to go across for a few stitches, as you can see here, just to kind of set it in place. And then I can use my presser foot on my machine, and I'm just sort of gently rolling it here with my nails or my fingers here, and I'm just going to go down a few more, and then just to secure it, I'm just going to just go back just to secure it for a few stitches. Now I'm using a stitch length of around 3, so it's a straight stitch again with a 0 stitch width, and around 3 for the actual stitch length, because I find that's quite a good stitch length when pulling in concealed zips. It's not too tight. So I'm just going to go along, and I'm just going to continue to sew the zip, and as you can see, it's staying within the groove here, which is making it easy to kind of stitch along. And I'm just going to continue going down right to the end as I sew this. And as you can see, the hand tacking stitches are just keeping the zip in place as I sew along down here. And you're just making sure you're sewing down and just keeping the zip in place as you sew. And you'll just continue to sew until you get to the end of where this zipper head is here. And then I'll just go back a couple of stitches and I will stop it there and just remove the zip from the foot there. So I'm now going to do the other side, and I'm just going to start at the top again. I'm just going to repeat that process where I slightly unravel it to get it in the slot there, as you can see. And then I'm just going to just by hand do a couple of stitches like so. And then I'm just going to back stitch a couple just to secure the thread. And then, like before, I can just sew down until I get to that zip head. So you'll now find that when you've sewn in your zip, you're going to have a little gap here between the seam line and where you could sew to the zip head. So what you're going to need to do here is you're going to need to ideally use your normal zipper foot, which normally comes with the sewing machine. So I've got that attachment here, because you're going to want this flattened edge to kind of get round and sew the stitches here, as I'm going to show you now. So using the zipper foot, I'm just going to push that fabric down and pull the end bit of the zip out the way here. So this is the bottom part of the concealed zip, and I'm just going to sew as much as I can just to this point where the pin is here, because that's where my seam line is. And I'm just going to do a straight line just to that point and just back stitch just to secure it there. I'm just going to remove that pin. And remove that from the machine. And now you'll see that it's joined in with the rest of the seam there. So I've now inserted the zip fully, and this is how it looks on the right side now that I've fully stitched it. So you've got the nice finish there when you've used the normal zipper foot just to join it to where the zip pull kind of finishes, and then you've got that join there, and then the rest obviously done on the concealed zip. So that all matches. So now this concealed zip's been installed, it's ready to put into the canvas. So I've now pinned the wrong sides together of the canvas. So I'm now going to use a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm going to sew around all the edges. And here is the finished cushion once the backing has been sewn to the canvas. And I've also re-overlocked it on my one as well, just because I wanted a shorter seam. I mean, if you've pink and sheared it, you can retrim, and again with the zigzag stitch you could redo that as well, or keep it as it is. It's just so it's a bit more crisp when I fold it through. And then here's the zip, and you can just then fold that through. So I've now turned it the right way round. That's your fully finished cushion. So here I am at home with my finished cushion, which I absolutely love. I think the green backing is really good for it. I really like that I picked the green out, and this lovely velvet, and then that's where the concealed zip is there. So it's all flat, rather than if you had like an envelope fold, you'd have a ridge. And it's really easy with the length that I did of the concealed zip to, you know, put the cushion inner in there. It's very easy. And then just zip back up. And yeah, super happy with that. So now that can be in my home. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see more of my video tutorials, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on the button below.